Alright, hi there, YouTube, and anybody else who's watching. Today I'm going to show you all my games collection, video game console collection. I'd say most of my consoles are up here, except my Wii and my PS3, my Virtual Boy, and my Genesis. I'll show you guys those later, but let's start with this. This is the Apple Pippin, Apple Bandai Mark Pippin. This is the Japanese model. It was released in 1995 for, I think, $500 or something. Basically what this thing is it's supposed to be sort of a hybrid between a video game console and PC, which is not a bad idea, but it's not really a terribly great idea either. And this is actually quite a heavy console. One interesting thing is it has a web modem. And then, let's see, where's the black one? Oh. Here is the US model. It's black. aaaaaaall is the name. This is pretty rare. Only a handful of these were actually made. Well, not a handful, but this is one of the worst selling consoles of all time. And then the controller. This is the controller right here. And, you know, it's kind of an interesting controller, I guess. Fits nicely in my hand. There's a trackball that's kind of cool. 2 shoulder buttons. D-pad is really weird. Overall, it's not too bad. Buttons are a little small, but it's not that bad. Here's the Japanese one. Pretty much the same, except it's white and it says @mark instead of @world. And then, while I'm over here, this is the Super Famicom and Nintendo Satellaview. Basically, the Super Famicom is the Japanese equivalent of the Super Nintendo. Satellaview was released in 1995. It's sort of an add-on for the Super Famicom. It was only released in Japan, and it allowed you to download games off a satellite. And it's kind of like a substitute for, I guess, the Sega CD, or for the Nintendo CD or whatever. The only game I have for the Super Famicom is Wrecking Crew 98. It's a pretty fun game, but it's all in Japanese. And then over here is one of my favorites, the Atari Jaguar, right here, and the Atari Jaguar CD. And this thing can play both CDs and cartridges. And one interesting thing about the cartridges is, well, they're curved, sort of. And there's also a handle on the top. Kind of nice. One thing though is there's no dust cover and no reset button, kind of annoying. But this was the first 64-bit console released. It was released in 1993. The Jag CD was released in 1995. On the back here is the Jag Link, which allows you to link up 2 Jaguar consoles. Cool. The controller. Oh, this was brilliant. I put the controller on the other side of the room. Here's the controller. It's really weird. It has a numeric keypad here. 3 buttons, no shoulder buttons. A D-pad. Not much else. There's also a team tap for this system, which allows you to play with 4 friends. that's about it for the Jaguar. And also one thing I forgot to mention, the Super Famicom controller looks like this. It's that system right there. It's a Super Famicom. Here's what the controller looks like. It has 4 really colorful buttons, shoulder buttons, start, select, and D-pad. And then over here we have the Neo Geo CDZ. This thing allows you to play Neo Geo arcade games. It was released in 1996. I think it was only released in Japan. I'm not entirely sure, but this is one of my least favorite consoles. I mean, the design is cool, but it's unreliable, to say the least. Here's the controller. It's the first modern controller I know of to have an analog stick. No shoulder buttons though. 4 really big buttons. Start, select. One thing that bothers me about this though, the analog stick constantly makes a clicking sound. Kind of annoying. And then right here is the Nintendo 64. First video game console I ever owned. If you're wondering what this cartridge is in here, it's a N64 modem, internet modem. And here on the bottom is the Nintendo 64 DD, stands for disk drive add-on. And basically this allows you to play a sort of floppy disk type games. 64 DD only came out in Japan in 1999, and only 9 games were released for it. Very unsuccessful. Although the 9 games for it are actually pretty decent. And then the N64 controller. I'm sure most of you have seen it. It's right here. Really nice design. Fits comfortably in your hand. Has a button on the bottom. Lovely analog stick. Start. A, B. These are your camera buttons, D-pad, and shoulder buttons. There's also a Nintendo 64 mouse, which was only released in Japan. A Nintendo 64 voice thing, which you would use with a microphone. Nintendo 64 memory card. Nintendo 64 Rumble Pack. Nintendo 64 Transfer Pack, which allows you to transfer games from which allows you to transfer data from your Game Boy games to your N64 games. And that's it for the Nintendo 64. So moving on to this. This is what I'm sure a lot of you have wanted to see. This is the Panasonic M2 Development System Drive Box, and Panasonic 3DO M2, and this thing was never released at all. This is a prototype. It's got a power button right here. Open. It's very square. Everything on this system seems to be square. 2 controller ports. I think that's for the memory card. Not entirely sure. Then this video, audio, and some sort of thing for developers, I would assume. And then, of course, the power cable. On the bottom, a bunch of stuff that you can't read, probably. So yeah, this is a prototype. I only know of 10 of them in existence in the world. Very cool system. I have a controller for it, but Since I grabbed this at the last minute from my grandparents' house, I don't have a controller with me, so I'll make a separate video for that. And then moving on to the TurboGrafx 16. This thing was released in, I think, 1989, competitor to the Sega Genesis. It uses these weird little cards called cue cards to play games. Not much else to be said about that. I really don't play it very much. Here's what the controller looks like. It's pretty much just standard, NES type controller. No shoulder buttons. Oh yeah, also there's only one controller port on the system, so it came with a turbo tap, which allows you to play with 5